Lesson 78, Jesus rises from the dead, and we'll take a look at Matthew, and here also in the beginning jump to Mark. So Jesus died on the cross. What two people came and took him off the cross and prepared his body? Faith? Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea. They wrapped his body up in grave clothes. Just make sure you remember that. Strips of cloth wrapped around his body. They placed him in a never used before sepulcher, type of cave. Garden of Gethsemane, and a stone was rolled in front, was sealed, and a guard was set in front of that stone. Roman soldiers, or some type of guards, were set there in front of that tomb to make sure that no man came and stole the body of Jesus away, or that there was any funny business. So that was on Friday night. Okay. The Sabbath day, the Passover, would have been celebrated on Saturday, okay, the last day of the week for the Jews. And now it is Sunday morning, the first day of the week. So they fulfilled their Sabbath observance, and now the people can be out and about and doing what they please again, or doing what they're called to do by God. Better way to put that. So chapter 28, verse 1. And the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn, toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. Behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning, his raiment white as snow. And for fear of him the keepers did shake and became as dead men. And the angel answered and said unto the women, Fear not ye, for I know that ye seek Jesus which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen. As he said, Come, see where the place where the Lord lay, and go quickly, and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead. And behold, he goeth before you into Galilee. There shall ye see him. Lo, I have told you. And they departed quickly from the sepulchre with fear and great joy, and did run to bring his disciples word. So we're going to stop there a second and then quickly go over to Mark chapter 16. So the end of Mark here. There were 5 women, we believe, that went. We talk about Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, Salome, and also a woman named Joanna. But anyways, so we get a little bit different here, but we get to see what they were talking about on their way there, because that's interesting to us too. So chapter 16 of Mark, verse 1. And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome had brought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. Very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. And they said among themselves, Who shall roll us away the stone from the door of the sepulchre? And when they looked, they saw that the stone was rolled away, for it was very great. And entering into the sepulchre, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white raiment, and they were affrighted. And he saith unto him, Be not affrighted, ye seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. He is risen, he is not here. Behold the place where they laid him. But go your way, tell his disciples, and Peter, that he goeth before you into Galilee. There shall ye see him, as he said unto you. So, let's go back to Matthew. I think that'll be a little bit easier place to do some of these discussions. But let's talk about the early in the morning. Okay? First day of the week. Now our Sabbath day, the day that we go into the house of worship, the day that Jesus arose. Just change that. Okay? So they begin to come here when the sun came up. That's when their Sabbath day observance ended. Sometimes it might be tempting for us to say, well, church is done now, we can do whatever we please. We've gone to church twice on Sunday. We see probably a better way to look at it is the way that the correct way would be the way that the Jews looked at it. Not just when you're done going to church, but when the sun comes up the next morning. For us it would be Monday morning. Okay? The Sabbath day for the Jews in their minds has ended. Okay? The women are coming to the tomb. There they travel. And what was the question in their mind as they came to the tomb? What were they concerned about, these women? What were they concerned about? Grant? Yeah. All of them combined knew their strength would not be able to move that stone away. They were bringing with them other things to maybe take care of the body of Jesus or to add to it ointments and more spices. But they weren't going to be able to go into his body because none of them, or even all together, they didn't have the strength to move that large stone, that large rock in front of the sepulchre. So they were concerned about that. But then their worries were suddenly over because what happened? What happened on their way to the sepulchre that was a wonder of God, was a miracle? What happened while they were on their way there? Logan? Yes. What else happened? So the angel rolled away the stone. What other things happened? Faith? Yeah. Jesus arose. That's essential. That Jesus arose. But Logan's right. An angel rolled the stone away. And what else happened at that time? What do we read? What happened to the land and the ground around there? Garrett? All right. Suddenly, on the way there, they aren't going to have to worry about that anymore because Jesus arose. That's going to present in their minds a problem because his body's going to be gone, so they don't need to add spices, but they don't know that yet. But they did feel the earthquake. They probably did not see the angel move that stone. No man did. No man can see the resurrection because that's a heavenly thing. Okay? Even the guards that were there, God caused probably a great sleep to come upon them. And they too did not physically witness with their eyes the resurrection of Jesus. That's a heavenly thing. Okay? But anyways, an angel rolled the stone away. There was a large earthquake. All of that happened. And Jesus arose. So they come to the tomb. And there they see. What do they see by the tomb? Micah? What do these women see sitting by the tomb? No, they don't see no one. What did the Bible say? Why don't you look back there at Matthew? In those first couple of verses, what did the women see? Who did they see? An angel. An angel was sitting there. It talks about some of his attributes. What are some things that they notice about him that the Bible in those two texts said about him? Megan? Okay. A white garment, a picture of no sin. Okay. What was his face? Well, how does it describe his face? He's a heavenly being. Garrett? Yeah, it shone brightly like lightning. That flash of bright light, that's how bright his face was. And there he sat on the stone. Now where were the soldiers? What had they done? Yeah, they were fearful. When all of this was going on, they knew that something wasn't right. And for their own lives, they fled. They did not stay there to meet these women. So there sits the angel in a beautiful, bright white light, picture of the heavens. You can imagine maybe like Moses' face, the way that his shone after he came down from seeing God so much that it was hard for the people to look at and he had to wear a veil. Imagine the women too, maybe having to turn away, not being able to almost see this heavenly beauty. But the angel tells them, Don't be afraid, fear ye not. What's happened? Why don't they have to be afraid? Why don't they need to be afraid? Kimberly? Jesus arose. The angel knew who they were coming and looking for, right? They're coming to look for Jesus. Here we have them being told, for he is risen. But then here, and I asked that in that question there, that second question under E there. Jesus, in a sense, gave them a little rebuke when he says, not Jesus, the angel, as he said. What does the angel mean there? Well, he is risen, as he said. Megan? They should have known he's not going to be here in the grave on the third day. As he said, he would arise. But that's not quite clear to them yet. They don't understand those things. In fact, that's why I asked that question before that. Do we think that many of the disciples and these women probably celebrated the Passover feast? We would probably say yes. Even though Jesus had told them he would be doing away with those Old Testament types and shadows, many of them probably still celebrated this last Passover feast because that's what they had done, and they didn't quite understand all things. Even though Jesus revealed it to them, and to us it may seem obvious, we need to be sure to not to be too judgmental, because if we were there, we would have not understood as much either. So we see that. And then 3 commands are given to the women. What do they have to do? What are their 3 things that they need to do here that the angel tells them in verses 7? And there's a third one that's back in Mark chapter 16. Garrett?
See where the Lord lay.
Sorry, Garrett, I didn't clarify my question. He did want them to come see where the Lord lay, but what was his direction after that point? What were the 3 responsibilities that these women now had to do? So you are right, he did say come see where, so they came in the sepulchre, they could see the grave clothes there, the headscarf unwrapped, laying there, the rest of it in the shape of a body. But Logan? Okay, go tell the disciples. Now Mark 16 puts it a little bit different. Go tell the disciples. That's job 1. But job 2 is what else? Peter. Peter had fled. He was probably embarrassed to be around the disciples. He didn't want to be around the rest of them. Remember, he needed to be so humiliated after he denied Jesus 3 times. He probably took off and was so humiliated he didn't want anything to do with the disciples. He was embarrassed to be around them, ashamed of what he had done. And so Peter is going to need special comfort. In fact, Jesus will specifically appear to just Peter later on. But Peter needs it. So not only go tell the disciples, because they're all in one place, but then also go tell Peter, he's in another. And then what's the third thing? What else do they have to do then? And that's in both of the passages, Matthew 28 and Mark 16. What else do they need to do? Kenton? Say there in verse 7. Tell the disciples and... what else here? Garrett, help them out. All right, they're in Jerusalem. They need to go through Samaria, all the way back north into Galilee, by the Sea of Galilee, by Nazareth. And there Jesus will appear to you. Okay? You want to see Jesus, you want to be comforted by him, the angel says, go to Galilee. So we'll see that in a little bit tomorrow, what happens with Peter and John and the rest of the disciples. We're not going to focus on that today, but before they go to Galilee, but here they are told, tell the disciples, tell Peter, go to Galilee. Are the 3 things that they need to do. So these women, it says, they departed quickly, and did run to bring his disciples word, filled with joy. You can imagine maybe even tears running down their faces. They were so happy with the wonderful, splendid news that Jesus was no longer dead, but arisen. Okay. And then let's pick up here. We left off in verse 8. Let's start in verse 9 here. Take a look what happens. And as they went to tell his disciples, Jesus met them, saying, all hail. And they came and held him by the feet and worshipped him. Then said Jesus unto them, be not afraid. Go tell my brethren that they go into Galilee, and there shall they see me. Now when they were going, behold, some of the watch came into the city and showed unto the chief priests all the things that were done. And when they were assembled with the elders and had taken counsel, they gave large money unto the soldiers, saying, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we slept. And if this come to the governor's ears, we will persuade him and secure you. So they took the money and did as they were taught. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. Okay. So we have a few things. We have Jesus appearing to the women. Okay. So we see that there. We'll treat more of that tomorrow. Okay. But what we want to take a look at here is, what about those guards, the ones who had run away? Where did they go to? Well, again, we know that there was a great earthquake. These men were asleep, or God caused them to, who knows, in the earthquake, faint or pass out. But when they were aroused and they knew what had happened, they probably looked into the tomb too, and they could see the grave clothes sitting there, but no body, and they ran to the chief priests and went and told them all that had happened. What did these leaders tell them to do? So they come to the leaders, and what lie were they commanded to tell? Joe? Not someone. The disciples stole the body. They came and they stole him away while we slept. Ooh, what's the problem with while we slept, Megan? As Roman law, if you were a guard in prison or anywhere else and you were sleeping, because we see this later on with the Apostle Paul and that jailer, one found sleeping while guarding the prisoners could be put to death. So they have to make up a lie and put themselves in a position of trouble to cover up that lie. Well, the disciples came and stole the body. And if they would tell their leaders, well, we were awake, and they stole them, they say, well, why didn't you use your spears and knives and everything else, swords? You must have been in cahoots with them. Off you go to prison or to death. So now we have to add to the lie that the disciples came another lie, that we were sleeping. And that's when it happened. So we couldn't stop them. But in that way, they're risking their lives. And what do the leaders say? That if the governor calls you out on that part, that you were sleeping, what will we do? What is the exact language of the Bible there? What do the leaders say there in that? Look at verses 14 and 15. What do they say they will do on behalf of these two guards? Thanks for telling the lie, and if they want to put you to death because you were sleeping, we will try to, Garrett, persuade them. We will talk to them and convince them that it's not your fault. Maybe they'll even add to the lie and say, yeah, the disciples are playing sweet music to make them fall asleep, or they gave them some potion that made them fall asleep, or they made them drink a bunch of wine and made them get drunk and fall asleep. Who knows what they'll persuade them with. Okay? But anyways, they paid these two guards to keep quiet. It was a lie. Not only have these leaders now crucified Jesus, but now they're trying to cover up that sinful, wicked deed that they did with another lie, and they reward these soldiers with money to keep quiet. Okay? Foolish idea that the disciples could come. But Jews to this day who see Jesus not as the Messiah, because Jews don't see Jesus as the risen Savior, but see Jesus only as a great prophet, that's what that means. They maintain that lie unto this day. Christians, you believe that Jesus rose from the dead? No, that's all foolishness. The disciples came and stole that body out, making us think that it was Jesus risen from the dead, but that's not true. The Messiah has not yet come. The Jewish faith believes there is not yet Christ come. And he's still going to come. They'll be found like those 5 foolish virgins with no oil in their lamps when Jesus does come the second time. They won't be found ready. Okay? So, Why wouldn't the Jews want Jesus to rise from the dead? What would that prove about them if he arose from the dead and it was true and that saying had been told to all the people in Jerusalem? Megan? If the President of the United States commits a crime and he uses things to cover it up, okay, and then that crime is later unearthed, he could be punished for that first crime. So the Jewish rulers here, they know Jesus is risen from the dead, but they aren't going to admit it, because if they do, now all the people know that they unjustly condemned Jesus to die. They were in the wrong. Pilate was in the right for a time, but he still condemned Jesus to be dead. Then they will be in real trouble. So they want to cover up this sin that they've committed with another lie. They don't want the people to know that Jesus is risen. No, no, no. He's only a great prophet whose body was stolen by his disciples. Even then they would never admit that he was a great prophet, but that he had blasphemed God's name by saying he was the Son of God. So, you see that there. And then I asked that one question: what is the difference between the soldiers at the grave and the women at the grave in regards to their belief in the resurrection? What is the difference? They both would have seen Jesus' body gone, not there, felt the earthquake, probably seen the angel. And what did the women have as a result of that? What did they have? Courtney, what did those women have as a result? Key word there is faith. Very good. They had faith that Jesus had arose from the dead and would come and visit them. Whereas the soldiers, they were filled with fear. They had no faith. Instead, they ran. And that's the reaction of the wicked too. When Christ will come again, they will run with fear. They will shake because they know they're wrong, but they lack faith. True saving faith that's given to them by God. They might know, they might have a knowledge and understanding of some things, but they lack true faith. And so that's the difference. Even though all the evidence is the same, some, because God has worked in their heart, have faith, and others, because God has not worked in their heart, are afraid.